You know how people always say, be more present, be more aware. Like that's the key to peace or growth or unlocking some version of yourself. But here's the truth. There's a line. And once you cross it, that awareness doesn't help anymore. It starts to weigh on you. Like your mind is tuned into every tiny detail, every shift in someone's energy, every possible meaning behind someone's silence. And suddenly, you're not more present, you're more tense. You feel it, right? That mental exhaustion that creeps in for no clear reason. You weren't running, you weren't working, but you're tired because you were mentally carrying everything. And no one talks about that. No one says that too much awareness can blur the boundary between what you need to notice and what your nervous system simply can't handle anymore. There's a moment when awareness shifts from being clarity to becoming surveillance. It's subtle. You start by observing your thoughts, watching your emotions, trying to respond instead of react. All the things you've learned through healing and self-reflection. But then, without noticing, you begin analyzing everything, not just your own behavior, but everyone else's too. Why did she say that with that tone? Why did he pause before replying? Why did I feel that sudden drop in energy when I entered the room? And instead of grounding you, your awareness becomes a constant filter, one that never lets you rest. Because awareness by itself doesn't equal peace. In fact, when it's unchecked, it becomes pressure. Like your mind is always open tabs, running in the background, monitoring, decoding, trying to make sense of things that maybe weren't meant to be figured out at all. And if you've been on this path of growth long enough, you've probably felt it too. That quiet fatigue that doesn't come from effort, but from constant alertness. Not because you're dramatic, not because you're overthinking, but because your mind hasn't learned how to stop observing. You became skilled at catching patterns, spotting inconsistencies, sensing emotional shifts. And now, you can't unsee anything. Here's where it gets even heavier. Not only do you see too much, but at some point, it becomes part of who you are. Like, you start to believe that being this hyper-aware person is your strength, your shield, your value, the reason you stay ahead, avoid pain, read between the lines faster than most people even notice the lines exist. And yeah, maybe it was a survival skill at first. Maybe it protected you from chaos, betrayal, manipulation, or even just emotional neglect. But now, it's not just protecting you, it's also limiting you. Because when your awareness becomes your identity, everything starts to feel personal. Every mood shift around you becomes a puzzle you need to solve. Every silence becomes a red flag. Every interaction becomes a signal to decode. And you don't realize it, but you're burning yourself out. Not physically, emotionally, energetically, spiritually. You're performing awareness all the time. Watching, reading, thinking, double-checking yourself, staying emotionally 5 steps ahead, as if the universe gave you a job title, and now you're afraid to take a day off. You're not living anymore. You're tracking your own experience, as if you're not allowed to just have it without analyzing it in real time. And that's the danger of unchecked growth. When even your inner peace starts to feel like something you have to earn by constantly being on, constantly being correct, constantly reading deeper into every single feeling, as if the surface is never enough. But what if it is? We don't talk about this enough. Awareness isn't the goal. It's a tool. But somewhere along the way, it got promoted. It became the end game. People started acting like the more aware you are, the more healed you are. Like awareness automatically means wisdom. But it doesn't. Awareness is neutral. It's a flashlight. That's all. It shows you what's there, what hurts, what's off, what's underneath the surface. But it's not peace. It's not stillness. It's not liberation. Because what happens if you keep the flashlight on 24/7? You stop resting. You stop dreaming. You stop letting things unfold naturally because you're too busy trying to understand them before they even begin. Sometimes the reason you feel stuck isn't because you're not trying hard enough. It's because you're trying too hard to stay conscious, too hard to stay emotionally fluent, spiritually precise, constantly in tune with what everyone's feeling and thinking and needing. And it creates this illusion that if you just see more, you'll finally feel safe. Like if you just become aware enough, you'll avoid the next mistake, the next betrayal, the next emotional slip-up. But real peace doesn't come from seeing more. It comes from knowing when to stop looking. It comes from understanding that you're not here to micromanage your healing like it's a spreadsheet. You're not here to obsess over every thought, every sign, every interaction. You're here to live, to experience life, to feel it. And you can't feel something fully when you're constantly dissecting it. Just like you can't relax into a moment you're trying to control. Awareness is the beginning of growth, not the destination. One of the most exhausting parts of being overly aware is that it quietly separates you from people. Not because you don't care, but because you care too much, in ways you can't even explain. You're not zoning out of conversations because you're bored. You're zoning out because you're busy tracking tone, energy shifts, undercurrents no one else notices. You're not pulling away emotionally because you're cold. You're pulling away because you're overwhelmed by how much you're noticing, feeling, absorbing. And it becomes hard to stay connected. Not because you don't want connection, but because it's hard to be present when your nervous system is in constant analysis mode. It's like you're running background software at all times, scanning the emotional temperature, the tension in the room, the intention behind every word. And no one sees that effort. To them, you're just quiet. To them, you seem calm, maybe even distant, but inside you're spinning, processing, managing 10 layers of reality while still trying to respond normally. And slowly, this gap forms between the version of you people experience and the internal work you're doing just to stay regulated around them. That's why so many hyper-aware people feel misunderstood, even in safe spaces, because they're not only aware of themselves, they're aware of how they're being perceived, and they can't turn that off. You walk into a room, and it's not just a room, it's data, signals, energy. Your mind's measuring every interaction for alignment, tone, emotional charge. You're not trying to do this, you just are. And while that's powerful, while that's even beautiful in some ways, it's also isolating. Because how do you explain to someone that being around people makes you tired? Not because of the people themselves, but because of how deeply you notice everything happening all at once. And here's the part that breaks people quietly. When even rest starts to feel like effort, you lie down to breathe, to disconnect, to stop thinking, and your mind goes, "Am I relaxing correctly? Is this enough? Should I be meditating right now?" Even peace turns into performance. That's the part hyper-aware people rarely talk about. How awareness doesn't just live in your thoughts. It seeps into your stillness. You start observing your own healing like a referee, judging whether your calm is real, whether your emotions are valid, whether your coping mechanisms are pure enough. You start second-guessing your own softness. Like peace is something that has to be earned. Like rest only counts if it looks a certain way. In every moment you don't feel completely centered, it becomes another thing to work on. But you weren't designed to be a machine of constant self-correction. You weren't meant to debug your mind every time a quiet moment gets too loud. You're not a spiritual project in progress. You're a human being in motion. Yes, you're evolving. Yes, you're aware. But that awareness isn't meant to police your experience. It's meant to guide it. And somewhere along the way, awareness became control. It became a way to monitor every mood swing, every minor trigger, every rise and fall of your emotional ocean, as if calm can only exist if it's managed, curated, understood. But what if the most powerful form of healing is simply letting it happen? Not analyzing it, not labeling it, not making it useful, just letting it move through you without a clipboard in your mind, grading it. Because that's the trap. You go on this journey to feel free, but you end up building a tighter cage using all the right tools. At some point, being aware became your way of staying safe. It became your shield, your early warning system, your backup plan when things around you felt unstable. You learned that if you could notice things early, the energy shift in someone's tone, the tight smile, the pause before a reply, then maybe you could stay ahead of disappointment. Maybe you could dodge pain before it landed. And in the beginning, it worked. It helped you. You saw things other people missed. You avoided situations others walked straight into. You read between the lines and made meaning out of the silence. But now, it's like your nervous system is trained to hunt for threat, even when there isn't any. You don't just feel a moment, you scan it. You don't just enjoy silence, you decode it. You don't just rest, you prepare. And you do it all without even realizing it. Because your body learned that awareness equals protection. That if you could stay ahead of the bad thing, it wouldn't hurt as much. That if you could catch the lie, the mood, the disconnect before it fully unfolded, you could stay in control. But control isn't safety. It's tension with better branding. And now, you're living with your shoulders always slightly raised. Your mind always partially on guard. Even in peace, you're waiting for the next ripple. Even in joy, there's a small voice checking how long it will last. You've convinced yourself that your awareness is keeping you grounded, but it's also keeping you from sinking in, because you can't fully enjoy a moment if part of you is always watching for when it might shift. You can't fully receive love if part of you is always calculating whether it's real. You can't truly relax if you've made awareness your personal security system, and it's not your fault. You built this because you had to, but you're allowed to outgrow it now. You're allowed to feel safe without scanning. You're allowed to feel joy without proof. You're allowed to walk into a room and not monitor the emotional temperature like it's your job. You're not here to track everything. You're here to feel it, to live it, to be in it. Let's be honest, growth can become a performance too. Not intentionally, not for show, but because you've internalized the idea that being on top of it all the time means you're healing. You don't cry without dissecting the meaning. You don't get angry without instantly trying to process it. You don't feel joy without mentally checking in to see if you're fully present for it. It's like you can't just feel anymore. You have to understand it, narrate it, refine it, all in real time. Like your emotional experience has become a 24/7 commentary. And maybe it started from a good place, wanting to evolve, to be intentional, to avoid old patterns. But now it's like you can't stop running internal diagnostics on yourself. You wake up tired, not because you didn't sleep, but because your brain has been managing your emotional software nonstop. Every reaction becomes a report. Every feeling becomes a folder to file. You've made growth your full-time job, but no one gave you the weekend off. And you didn't even notice, because this version of you looks so together on the outside. You reflect, you self-correct, you stay calm. You don't spiral anymore, at least not visibly. But under the surface, you're exhausted, not from breaking down, but from holding it together too well for too long. That's the part no one tells you about healing. It's not just about how much you've grown. It's also about how much tension you're still carrying in the name of that growth. You can be self-aware and still be burnt out. You can be emotionally fluent and still be overwhelmed. You can be doing everything right and still feel like you're slowly unraveling from the inside out. And that doesn't mean you failed. It just means you've forgotten that healing was never supposed to be perfect. It was supposed to be human. So here's what I'll tell you. If you've been feeling drained lately, not because of what you're doing, but because of what you're constantly tracking, you're not broken. You're not falling apart. You're just tired of being in analysis mode all the time. You don't need more awareness. You need more room. Room to just exist without having to make sense of every emotion. Room to experience people without calculating their energy. Room to feel joy without bracing for when it might end. You're allowed to stop treating your peace like a fragile experiment. You're allowed to let go of the pressure to understand everything. You don't need to earn rest. You don't need to earn softness. You don't need to explain your sensitivity to people who don't see it. You've done the work. You've learned how to notice. So if you're watching this and it feels like it's speaking directly to your mind, your heart, your nervous system, comment the word room down below, because that's what this is about, making room to breathe again. And if this video felt like something you needed to hear, don't forget to like, subscribe, or just come back to it anytime you need to step out of your own head for a minute. Until next time, take care of yourself. Not just the aware version of you, but the real, soft, tired, breathing human you.